Hey there. Welcome to A Moment in Time with Taylor. Thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to check out our website, femyoga.com. Check out that 3-minute YouTube video there on the homepage if you like what you see and you want to help us to make our dreams reality here of getting this channel live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Please do support the channel by clicking that support button, or you can contribute something off of our Amazon wish list, or you can contribute through streamlabs.com/femyoga. So we're going to do a book review tonight. If you're new to this channel, I try to read a new book every single week. I've been reading quite a few here in December since I moved twice this year and got a little bit behind on my reading goal for the year. I want to read 52 books this year. I'm at about 40 or so. So you're going to be seeing a lot of book reviews coming out on this channel over the next few days. So if you're not already following or subscribed on YouTube and Periscope, be my guest. I see Ryan, the first comment to the broadcast over on YouTube. He just won an album on our last broadcast from Chris Angeles, another content creator here on this channel. And we also had somebody win this tripod. It was Lise. Got to ship it to Canada, which is where the author of this book is from. Well, it's actually where he lives, in Canada. I think he's originally from England. Hopefully he doesn't watch this because I didn't do enough homework to be able to talk about his history. So I don't have the book that I'm doing the review on tonight in physical format because it was an ebook, but this is another book that I read from the same author, and it's one of my favorite books I've ever read. So again, the author is Stefan Molyneux. He's in the title. The Art of the Argument, Western Civilization's Last Stand. This is an excellent book. You can check out my review about that on Goodreads. The link is also on my website, or you can sign up for my free book reviews and summaries there as well. So tonight we're going to be talking about a free book. So this book was actually a free book on his website. He also has the book that we're talking about tonight free on his website. His website is freedomainradio.com. I'm going to type it into the chat over on YouTube so you guys can check him out if you want. It says error. Try again. Maybe because I didn't put the little beginning part. It says error. I'm not sure why it's giving me an error. Well, I'm trying to promote you, Stefan. Sorry, it's not letting me. So anyway, it's freedomainradio.com. And the next one I'll be reading from him, which is another free book available on his website, is On Truth, The Tyranny of Illusion. So he has, I'm going to go through here. So if you go to freedomainradio.com/free, he has Essential Philosophy, How to Know What on Earth is Going On, The Art of the Argument, The Handbook of Human Ownership, a manual for new tax farmers, Against the Gods, a concise guide to atheism and agnosticism, Real-Time Relationships, the Logic of Love, Everyday Anarchy, the Freedom of Now, and Practical Anarchy, the Freedom of the Future, How Not to Achieve Freedom, Revolutions, and the Origins of War in Child Abuse by Lloyd DeMouse. So really, really cool guy. He offers free books right there on his website. They're super interesting, super fascinating, really concise, well written. Doesn't feel like you're wasting your time when you're reading a nice short book like this. This book was, I think, 135 pages. It was in ebook format, and I spent a few hours reading it tonight. Or actually, I started reading it a few days ago and finished tonight. Hey, Asha, thanks for being here. And hey, Katie. Did I say hi to you already, Katie? Oh, thanks, Jim. Thank you for that. I keep missing comments. I don't know why. But I really enjoyed this book. Now, I will say that I didn't feel like he fully convinced me on one of the points in this book, which was the point of theft. So let me just do an overview here. What is universally preferable behavior? It's basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to define an ethics system or a moral system that is universal, that it's something that all humans universally prefer these behaviors. Now, of course, there's going to be certain humans that at certain times do not prefer these behaviors because of issues like, you know, maybe mental illness or their own history of abuse, but these people are considered to be the exception, not the universal rule. So if we define a cat and say a cat has 4 legs and a cat is born with 3 legs, we do not change the definition of a cat because of the exception. We just say that that's an exception to the rule, but the general rule, the universal rule, is that cats have 4 legs. Make sense? What he comes to conclude in this book is that there are 3 main universally preferable behaviors and almost like 3 universal evils. So it's easier for me to define it in terms of evils, which is universally unpreferable. Thank you, Asha, for sharing this out on Twitter. Oh, hey, Lady Patriot, welcome back. So the 3 that he defines as evils are rape, murder, and theft. Rape and murder, really easy. I barely even felt like I needed to read that. I didn't feel like I was wasting my time, but I definitely didn't feel like I needed to be convinced quite as thoroughly and as well as he did convince me. And then when he got to the subject of theft, I was left feeling a bit of lack. Like I wasn't fully convinced that that was a... So the way he defines a universally preferable behavior is a behavior that can be defended through violence, through the use of force. So, in other words, if someone is trying to murder you, you can defend yourself. So you can inflict violence and the use of force only if someone is initiating that force and violence against you in the first place. And it's to varying degrees. So he talks about the importance of choice, of your ability to avoid the situation. So by putting your, let's say for example with rape, if you are in your home asleep in your house and someone breaks into your home and violently rapes you and you don't know this person, chances are you really couldn't have done anything different to avoid that. You're 100% a complete victim of that situation. If on the other hand you go to a frat party alone, you get hammered drunk, you get naked and dance on the table, of course you're still a victim of rape if you get raped that evening. However, to the degree that the rapist is evil actually does vary depending on the ability of your choice and your role in it as well. Not that you asked to be raped, but just that you increased the odds of being raped by making certain choices. So we can avoid these evils in life by doing certain things like locking our doors at night or being well able to defend ourselves, being prepared to be violently attacked. God forbid that ever happen, but being prepared for it rather than being an easy target. Let me just see what I'm missing here. Hey Alex, hey Jordan, hey Hadasumi. How's everybody feeling? I feel like my YouTube is being a little tricky, so let me just refresh that real quick. And then I'm going to pull up the book itself because I want to read this to you guys and see if you agree with me on that. Theft. It doesn't seem to be bringing me to the right page. Let me jump to the page myself. Page 75. And this is a free book, so I'm giving full credit to the author, Stefan Molyneux. This is, again, called Universally Preferable Behaviors. And I am not trying to take any credit for this. Now, it's free. You can go to his website right now and get it for free. So I think he would be okay with me reading his words out loud. But please, if this is a problem, rather than file a copyright claim against me, please just reach out to me and ask me to take this video down, and I will do it immediately. Thank you. Hey, Tyler. Okay, so I'm going to read this. So he made a very good point about rape and murder. He said that no one can make an argument that... Thank you, Lady Patriot, for the super hearts. First super hearts of the broadcast. I very much appreciate that. No one can make a... Yeah, keeping your head up on a swivel. Yes, being aware, being sober. Dr. Phil, hello. Oh, losing my train of thought. Okay, so no one can say that it is a good thing to murder, because if you said that murdering was morally good, and you have, let's just take 2 people as an example. There's 2 people in a room, and you say that it is morally good to murder. Well, they can't both murder each other simultaneously. It's one person's going to have to be the victim. And if that person is the victim, then we actually, by saying that it's morally good to murder, we say that the victim is immoral, which is obviously not the case. They didn't have any choice in the matter in order for it to be a true murder, because that's the thing, is if you volunteer for that person to kill you, if you say, yeah, I want you to kill me, that's a different degree of murder if it's murder at all. If you're standing at a cliff with another person, and the person says to you, come stand in front of me so I can push you off this cliff to your death, and you walk over and stand in front of them, it's almost suicide more than it was murder, because you could have easily avoided the situation by not going and standing in front of them when they just told you if you did they were going to push you off the cliff, kind of thing. Yeah, it's kind of like, there's so many different gray areas, outside of these, but that's why he tries to make these three concrete, universally preferable behaviors. Even though occasionally certain individuals will not prefer these behaviors, those will be the exceptions, and universally, murder, rape, and theft are not preferable behaviors for society. So it's universally preferred to not murder, to not rape, and to not steal. J-Tag's like, I could get him off. Are you a lawyer, J-Tag? Right, so Todd, that would be considered an exception, because the vast majority of humans do not consider dying to be fun. They would consider that to be, not what they want. They prefer to live. Universally, as a general rule of thumb, we can call it a heuristic, if you will. So if you say that it is morally good, it's obviously, it can't be the case. Now, if you say it's morally good not to murder, two people can be in the same room and both not murder each other and both be morally good. So it's open to everyone. If anything eliminates a person's ability to be morally good, then it can't be a universally preferable behavior. So if someone's in a coma, or if they're asleep, their choices, their actions, their behaviors, if any at all, probably quite limited, cannot be considered moral or immoral because they are not conscious. Morals and ethics have to do with our mind. They have to do with conscious choices. And we're not dealing here with immoral thoughts or unethical thoughts, but behaviors, because we can't judge feelings. We can't say anger is good or bad, because it's a subjective feeling that we can't really prove existed or did not exist. But what we can use empirically test is action, is behavior of different people. Virtue and sin, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, sin is, so one of my favorite, thank you for saying that, because this just reminded me, one of my favorite elements of this book was when he said that individual criminals are not what we're worried about. They're not the most dangerous thing to society. A rapist, a murderer, even if it is a very skilled serial rapist or a serial murderer, serial killer, or an amazing thief, that those individuals are not the threat to society as much as the threat to society is government and religious systems of control that perpetuate wrong moral and ethical teachings and convince people that universally preferable behavior is actually immoral. So they might say, the government may say, killing is wrong. You may not kill. However, we can kill. If we are wearing our military uniform, we are now licensed to kill. It is now no longer immoral for us because we put on a certain outfit and we had a certain teacher and a certain person told us that it was okay to kill, so therefore morals don't apply to us. That cannot hold true. That's simply not the case. And so what he's saying is it's more dangerous to think that the government is virtuous than it is to be worried about one killer, when you have an organized crime syndicate, aka the government. And then religion as well. So religion may say that, what's a good example here? I struggle to talk about religion sometimes because there's so much difference in each religion, but to say that they have a special, like in all the religions, the priests, the leaders of the religious organizations, those are the people that get to dictate what is moral and what isn't moral and what's right and what's wrong and what God thinks. And there's no empirical evidence for God, so therefore you can't apply it to a system of reason. So what we're trying to do as much as possible is empirically and scientifically test and prove that certain behaviors are either good or bad for humans, and in this case not even good or bad, but preferable or not preferable. Government and religion don't mix. Actually, they're almost this exact same thing. I mean, they say that their rules are best and that they're superior, because there are religions that command you to murder anyone who doesn't believe in the religion. There are religions that say that you should basically disown your own body and give it up to them. You know, they say it's not to them, it's to God. It's the same thing that the people that work for the state say. Well, it's not for them individually, it's for the overall good of society. But society is not society isn't a society can't choose to do something. Individuals within a society behave a certain way, which causes, cause and effect. You can't grow up in a moralistic society and not believe in morals. One might ignore them. I'm not sure if I follow that train of thought, but he definitely talks about anyone saying that that there's no such thing as morals and that there can be no morals, that there are certain instances in which it's okay to murder or rape or steal, that they just cannot stand. There is no logic or reason behind them. Because if you say it's okay to steal, then you automatically assume that property rights are important. Because if you have something and I steal it, I wouldn't have stolen it if I didn't think I would be able to keep it. If someone was just equally as able to steal it from me, and that it was all just, oh, it's good to steal, there would be no benefit to stealing, because you wouldn't be able to retain anything you have. So it kind of like, it crumbles on itself. And the same thing if you say murder is good or beneficial, or rape is good or beneficial. Mark, there is right or wrong. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here, Chris, is what is it? And what are there any concrete, universally preferable behaviors that we can define? And he starts going into other things. So I actually was hoping that this book would be a lot more in-depth into certain behaviors and whether or not they're universally preferable, where it seems like he spent probably half of the book proving that universally preferable behaviors exist and are a thing and are reasonably and logically sound. And then he just he talks about rape in full detail, and that was really easy to get behind. Murder was really easy to get behind. But then theft, I felt like it was just lacking. I can't think of a better word than lacking. I just wish that he had written some more about that, I suppose. So let me read it to you guys and see what you think. So he talks about self-defense. Okay, so theft. We'll have to spend a little bit more time on theft, but he doesn't. He spends less time. He spends the least amount of time on theft that he does to the others. Since it inevitably brings into the picture the question of property rights, which is highly contentious for some. There are many ways of approaching the question of property rights, from homesteading to legal definitions to practical considerations, etc. I will address none of these here because the question of property rights must fall into the framework of UPB being universally preferable behaviors, if UPB is to stand as a rational methodology for evaluating moral propositions. Rape is going to mean something entirely different to secluded tribes. Not really, though, Todd. The victims of rape never prefer to be raped, and that's the universal part of it. So even if a few individuals in the human race prefer to rape people, they wouldn't prefer to be raped, therefore they don't think rape is good. Makes sense? Clearly, the moral proposition with regard to property rights is this: either human beings have the right to own property or they do not. Now, the first property that must be dealt with is the body. Ownership must first and foremost consist of control over one's own body, because if that control does not exist or is not considered valid, then the whole question of morality, let alone property, goes out the window. So if you claim that you don't have control over your own body and it belongs to someone else, then you have no control over anything that you do, and there really is no point in even trying to apply reason, right? Because there is you have no choice in any matter. You have no say. Of course, rape isn't good, yeah. Who wrote these guidelines? What do you mean guidelines? This book was written by Stefan Molyneux. His name's in the title, and he does have a Twitter account. Transfer of wealth or lordship by way of wife raping, utter nonsense. I mean, if you could find a society that actually practices that rather than a theoretical one, and that's another thing that he says, is like when people talk about how the government is actually the most dangerous, the most dangerous, what's the word, institution, in the world, as opposed to a rapist or a murderer being the most dangerous, because that's what people are, they're always like, well, if we got rid of the government, everyone would be free to murder and rape. And like, well, you realize that the prison system is where people get raped at a much higher rate than anywhere else in regular society, probably even in some made-up tribe that Todd may or may not actually have proof of. He says it's not theoretical. So what's the name of the tribe, and what can I look up to learn about them? You're going to connect him to the UN? Okay. Okay, I'm going to see. I try not to read comments too much. I want to engage with you guys, and I do want to hear what you have to say. Sometimes it throws me off what I'm trying to say, and then I run into a awkward silence. Yes, he is an entertainer. So Stefan Molyneux was very big into theater art for a while, and he found that when he just sits here like me and kind of talks and drones on, he has 18 people that listen, whereas if he gets really fired up about it and uses name calling and does this with his face and his hands, that he gets a lot more views and a lot more interest, which is good for our kind of business. So hopefully I don't have to do those same things, but I get that. It's not like I've agreed with 100% of the things that Stefan has said, and I don't prefer his demeanor all of the time, but that doesn't really matter. What he says is what matters. J-Tag, in a way he does flirt with that, but definitely nowhere near Alex Jones level. I have amazingly freaky expressions. I should try that. It's crazy how, if you are doing some type of acting, I'm not an actress, but if I ever try to do something like funny or something on my show, when I watch it back, I'm like, oh my god, my timing sucks, and I'm not expressive enough. Like, I feel like, oh, I'm being so expressive, and it's just like, we see so much action and drama in our everyday life that it's like we have to blow things up to really even be interesting or exciting to people. No milk and cereal. I keep trying to sponsor you, but it seems not to work. What do you mean? On the website? femyoga.com. Looks like it's up. Support. I do not think God exists, no. Define God, though. I do not think that the Christian God exists as defined by the Bible. Old MacDonald Bear. You have a video to show me? Okay, awesome. Hey, Al, how are you? Good to see you. Al likes this kind of stuff, too. Logging into PayPal and nada. What do you mean, nada? What does it say? I just tested it yesterday or the day before, and it was working. Does it show you at $10 a month? I don't think so. I didn't see anything pop up. No, nothing went through yet. Which God exists then? What? None? Big fan of UPB. Yay! The Fukawi. The Fukawi tribe are a lost tribe. They walk around saying, we're the Fukawi. Undead Ted, you caught me off guard with that comment. I totally thought that was a real thing, and I'm reading it, and then I'm like, not to be bold or brash, but I wouldn't read that Molyneux stuff. Okay, and why not? Trust me when I say the Christian God influences all of our lives. Do you know who Adam Kokesh is? I don't. It just shows my normal account. I'll keep trying. Sorry to interrupt. No, it's okay. No, we can't keep this thing going if that's not working. So it's good to know if it's not working. But hopefully it is. If anyone wants to test it out for like $5 just to see if it's working, femyoga.com. Click support. Who sets the standards that are acceptable? I'm not sure what you mean. In what system? What kind of system do you mean? Do you mean just philosophically? Because philosophers are basically thinkers. So if you think, we can hopefully, if we are thinking reasonably and experimenting in the real world and not talking about anger and fear and courage and integrity, all these things that are great, and we can kind of like just talk about them in an open way, but you can't really make any, you can't have anything black or white there. You can't actually say that it is moral or immoral to be angry. You know, the behavior is where it goes into something that you can actually empirically test whether it's preferable or not. The law Aurora. Molyneux seems narcissist. Well, a lot of people probably are. But I mean, having an ego and being a narcissist, actually having narcissistic personality disorder is probably two different things. But I do have a book back there about narcissistic personality disorder. There's this Asian writer who has a reading list that I found to be pretty contemporarily relevant. Okay, sure. Yeah, if you have recommendations for reading for me, please message me wherever you like. Twitter, Instagram, email, Twitch, YouTube. Find me there. All the contact info's on the website, and you can let me know what you guys think. Two people will potentially have two different sets of socially... Okay, so socially acceptable is different than universally preferable. So what we're talking about right now is universally preferable, meaning globally, if you are in the human race and you're not in the vast minority of exceptions, like you have, like, oh, that was another thing I meant to say. So if you're in a coma or you're sleeping or if you are mentally disabled, then you are basically exempt from moral or anything being moral or immoral, because you're almost basically not in control and you can't actually make choices based on reason, which removes the ability for it to be immoral or moral. Thank you. Thank you for the super hearts. That's nice. Grizzy, thank you for the super hearts too. So nice. Hey Lou, thanks for inviting. You guys are the best. This is the best. Hey Jim Vogel. Jim Vogel said Fukui. I'm gonna review 12 Rules for Life one of these days. What's that, Al? 12 Rules for Life? Okay, so me and Al are pretty like-minded people, so if he recommends a book that I haven't read, I'm probably gonna put it on my list while I'm live, so just stand by. I feel like if Stefan ever saw this, he would be like, okay, well, this is, oh, it's already on my want-to-read list. It's going to be like, well, I thought this was a book review, but it's mainly just a girl talking to her friends on the internet. Yep, pretty much. Welcome, Stefan. Thanks for watching. I'd love to be on your show. And I'd love to have you on my show, too. I invited him on my show, and they were like, meh. I was like, meh. For example, universally preferable behavior, don't eat the last slice of pizza. Thank you for the super hearts, Lou! I'll send the tweet. It's comprehensive and it's full of a ton of books that have a lot of taste, in my opinion. Glad you're open-minded to it. Yes, Mexican, not Mexican, but Mexican. The best way is to actually message it to me, because for some reason when someone tags me on Twitter on a tweet, it shows me that, like, I don't know, maybe 50% of the time, so I don't want to miss it. So if you direct message the tweet, so when you go to the tweet, you can like share or like send via direct message, I think, or something, or just like copy the link and direct message it to me. My direct messages are open, so it's not like I have to be following you or anything. You can message me, and that way I'll make sure that I'll definitely see it. And I check my messages on Saturdays, so you probably won't get a response from me until at least next weekend, and I'll be traveling, so bear with me the end of the year. But I love studying this type of stuff. I may disagree with China on the social credit system. Yeah, definitely. That's ridiculous. It's Jordan Peterson. It is Jordan Peterson. Good call, JTag. It wants a freaking email, Addie. Yours, not mine. Just use femyogataylor@gmail.com, but that shouldn't be happening when you're using that button. Jack is shadow banning Taylor in her dangerous show. What? No. Jack loves me. He likes yoga. Jack, come on. Let's just be friends. UPB, don't gamble the Buffett money. UPB, better remove all religions first. Definitely. Remove all government and all religion. Woo! Okay, sorry. Woo. Maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves there, but I'm down for it. Okay. Where were we? Theft. I was reading about the theft. We were talking about property rights. Or property rights. First and foremost, a man must be responsible for his own actions if they are to be judged morally, since, as we have argued above, the capacity to choose actions is fundamental to any ethical evaluation. PewDiePie? I don't think I am subscribed to PewDiePie. If a man has no control over his body, isn't he a gamer broadcaster? Then clearly he has no responsibility for his actions. They are not, in fact, his actions, but rather the actions of his body. No one would rationally argue that if a man strangles another man, it is his murderous fingers that should be put on trial and punished. Clearly the body cannot entirely control itself, but rather must be to some degree under the direction of the conscious mind. This means that a man is responsible for the actions of his body, and therefore he is responsible for the effects of those actions. A man is responsible for where he puts his penis, which is how we know that we can judge him for raping someone. He owns the actions of his body as surely as he owns his body. To say that a man is responsible for his body but not the effects of his body is to argue that a man is responsible for aiming and throwing a knife but not for where it lands. Thanks for inviting, Ed. Thanks for the super hearts. Also, arguing that a man is not responsible for the effects of his body is a self-detonating statement similar to the ones we examined above for rape and murder, and I talked about that a little already. If I say to you, men are not responsible for the actions of their body, okay, so then he just like spends way too much time proving that we own our bodies, a little bit too much. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yep, we own our bodies. All right. Yep, okay, good. Yes, I'm gonna skip all this where he basically spends all this time that I'm scrolling through talking about that. I'm live on YouTube and Periscope. The war against corporations and to keep the pewds #1 is of utmost importance to the internet. Against corporations, I don't know. I don't think corporations are a problem here, you guys. The only evil that a corporation can perpetuate on us is granted to them through the government. Therefore, the source of evil is not corporations. Make sense? Stefan. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I know. That's what I mean. I feel like he focused on the wrong thing here. He spent most of this part proving that we own our bodies and we're responsible for what our bodies do, but didn't really talk about theft. Like, I feel like he kind of forgot what he was supposed to be talking about or something. Or maybe, here, let me take it back. The problem definitely could be in my understanding and that I'm missing something here, which is why me and Stefan should talk about this. Stay tuned. Maybe I can get him on the show or get on his show, freedomainradio.com, and if I do, I will definitely be streaming it live if possible. Okay. I think he does call-in shows on Friday nights. Dun, 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 dun. Yep. Yep, still going on about that. Okay. And it says, even if we reject the above, which to me means, why the hell did we spend so much time talking about it if you don't even need it? We can still use universally preferable behavior to definitively assert the existence of universal property rights. As mentioned above, either human beings have property rights or they do not. Except for a few gray areas, which we will get to shortly, this remains a universal proposition. If a man does not have the right to use property, then he does not have the right to use his own body. He does not have the right to use his own lungs and therefore must stop breathing. And it's like, dude, we get it that you own your body, but talk about actual things. It is fairly safe to assume that anyone you are debating property rights with is drawing breath and thus agrees with you that he has the right to use his own body. The question then comes up whether or not human beings have the right to exclusive property use. For instance, property could be defined as a sort of timeshare principle of ownership insofar as everyone should have the right to own everything on some schedule or another, which is obviously not an argument that anyone makes. I think everyone should have control of their own bodies. Yeah, me too, Chris. I think we all agree on that, which is like, it's almost like he's acting like people would argue this, but I don't know that that would be the argument. But he has like 20 years experience debating these types of things, so he's obviously had this argument before. And it's obviously triggered him to write like 5 pages about it. Okay. And then that's it. This is, okay. Without exclusive self-ownership, there is no you to begin with. Thus, we can reasonably say that exclusive self-ownership is a basic reality, that all human beings at all times and in all places have exclusive ownership over their own bodies and thus have exclusive ownership over the effects of their own bodies, both in terms of moral behavior and property creation or acquisition. Okay, like what does that have to do with theft? Rape in any situation is wrong. Hey, Edan? Is that how you say it, or is it Aiden? Edan? I don't know. Hi, Love Troll, how are you? Oh, here we go. Okay, there's still a little bit. Nope, he's still talking about exclusive property rights. Yep. We have full ownership over our own bodies and the effects of our bodies in terms of external property. This is like 10 pages later. Yep. Thus, by combining this axiomatic reality, we can easily understand that since anyone debating property rights is exercising 100% control over his own property, the only question is whether or not property rights vary from individual to individual. A question definitively settled by the axiomatic fact of self-ownership as well as the UPB framework. Any moral proposition must be universal and consistent. This is how we also know that everyone has 100% property rights. Any other possibility is logically and empirically impossible. The last book I reviewed, I think, was Letters from Hawaii by Mark Twain. Reference the case of NBC versus David Letterman over intellectual property. Wait, why? I know what intellectual property is. Yep. Petrie from Lamforta. Yep. Let us return to our patient moral guinea pigs, Bob and Doug. If theft is morally good, then once again we face the problem of the impossibility of simultaneous morality. My problem is not that whether or not stealing is preferable. Of course, stealing is universally not preferable. However, he defines universally preferable behaviors as being able to be defended by the use of force. So you can violently defend yourself against theft. I don't know. Like, if someone comes into my house and is stealing my TV, like, can I really shoot them? Like, according to him, I don't know. Is he saying that I can only steal from him? Like, I can only do back to him what he does to me, like, to the same level? So, like, if he steals my TV, I have to, like, follow him and then go steal his TV. Social Darwinist logic. What does that mean? In some states, might makes right type thing. No, that's what you think. The argument for self-defense is might makes right. In the kneecaps, yeah, you can only shoot him like in like the foot, or get your posse to jump him. Yeah, that's what I see. I didn't feel like he made a good argument for why it should be defendable through force. So I guess he's basically just saying that theft is unreasonable. All right, let me go up to find where he defines universally preferable behavior. Oh God. It's not moving me through the pages. This is going to take me a minute to find. Oh wait, here, let me go through the table of contents. You must fear bodily harm, death, or rape of yourself or another person. That's what I mean. So, I don't mean can I legally, I didn't mean like that, I just mean like according to his framework, is that what his argument is? Let me skip to the non-aggression principle because I thought that was a really interesting one. How do I scroll to page 53? Okay. The non-aggression principle. Thanks for sharing on Twitter. Full-on anarchist. I already kind of am. I'm a voluntarist. But I get that concept from Stefan. A moral rule is often proposed called the non-aggression principle, or NAP. It is also called being a porcupine pacifist, insofar as a porcupine only uses force in self-defense. The NAP is basically the proposition that the initiation of the use of force is morally wrong, or, to put it in the terms of our conversation, the non-initiation of force is universally preferable. There are only 7 possibilities, 3 in the negative, 3 in the positive, and 1 neutral. The initiation of the use of force is always morally wrong. The initiation of the use of force is always morally right. The initiation of the use of force is sometimes morally wrong or sometimes morally right. The initiation of the use of force is never morally wrong or never morally right, or the initiation of the use of force has no moral content. So he says he unites that with universally preferable behavior and whittles that down to 3. 1, it is universally preferable to initiate the use of force. It is universally preferable to not initiate the use of force, or the initiation of the use of force is not subject to universal preferences. Hey, Linda, you always used skunk instead of porcupine. That's why the libertarian symbol is a porcupine. Really? I didn't know that! Ah, that's so cool. This is the natural result of applying the requirement of rational consistency to ethical propositions. A rational theory cannot validly propose that opposite results can occur from the same circumstances. This consistency must also be required for systems of ethics, or UPB, and we will subject generally accepted moral theories to this rigor in Part 2 in a few pages. However, since we're dealing with the question of consistency, it's well worth taking the time to deal with our capacity for inconsistency. I can't. It was hard to get through this book, to be honest with you. Porkfest? What's Porkfest? I was like 10 when I came up with pacifist skunkism. Pacifist skunkism. That's great. I like that. Skunks are really cute, too. How are you, Linda? Sugar, sugar. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of thinking, I like the non-aggression principle, but I'm not going to sit here and read like a million pages as to why the initiation of force. I should find that, though. Oh, but it's not letting me search through easily. Sorry. I swore. Avoidance versus initiation. Any threat of the initiation of violence is immoral, but the question of avoidance, particularly the degree of avoidance required, is also important. In general, the more that a threat interferes with the normal course of daily actions, the more egregious it is. If I have to fly to another continent in order to walk in front of your house, that is scarcely an everyday activity. If I'm threatened with violence for walking down the only road towards my own home, that is a far worse intrusion upon my liberties. If I have to take specific and unprecedented action to trigger a threat, that's one thing. If I trigger the threat through normal everyday activities, that is quite another. Telling you I will slap you if you stand on your head on the dark side of the moon is scarcely a threat. Telling you I will slap you if you breathe is. Ethics, aesthetics, and avoidability. So ethics, he's saying, are universally applicable. They're morals. They're like universally true. Aesthetics is something that's more like a preference, like you have a preference for ice cream or not. And avoidability is kind of what we're talking about, your ability to avoid the situation. New Hampshire. You say egregious every day. It's spelled E-G-R-E-G-I-O-U-S, I think. This doesn't require moral reasoning until after an incident wherein the law steps in. If you think your property has no value, then you wouldn't mind if someone takes it. It's a libertarian convention in New Hampshire put on the Free Stater people. Porkfest in New Hampshire? Oh, I love having my brain woken up. Me too. Me too. I'm all over the place because there's like 10 different commenters here, which I really enjoy. I don't use it daily. No, I like that. That's cool. That's cool that you use it at all. Hi, Trapper. We're talking about this book called Universally Preferable Behavior by Stefan Molyneux, the same guy who wrote this book, The Art of the Argument, which I love this book so much. Whew. And it's awesome, but it's also like trying to take a drink out of a fire hydrant in some way. And I'm kind of just tired, I think, at the end of the day. Yeah, The Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, I know. I thought of Pink Floyd, too. Oh, G-Force. What do I want to call you? Gray. I want to call you Gray F-Land. How are you, my friends? How's it going? Okay, so that's like the first part. I thought there was one more thing I wanted to talk about here. Yes, I think it's this. 64. I'm hungry. I'm going to make pasta after this broadcast. And you guys can't stop me. And I'm probably going to drink a beer because I finished this book today and I did my book review about it. And I'm feeling good about that. Free State Project is a bunch of libertarian people that get to move there, and NAP is the key tenant. Is this cool? The lunatics are on the grass. What does that mean? Can you play the keyboard? I can a little bit. Not very well. I'll play for you, G-Force. Let's do it. I like how what you're reading describes aesthetics as what's preferable. You might want to read it yourself because who knows if I'm communicating it correctly. It's like the only thing I can play. Ready? So, preferences. Some people prefer me to do that, some people prefer me not to. She looks like a midget. Know your surroundings, know the person you want to be with. If you don't match, then don't waste time. Okay. So the 7 categories are: it is good, which says universally preferable and enforceable through violence, such as don't murder. So they're saying, like, if you see someone who's about to murder somebody else, you can be violent towards the person. You can defend somebody else, especially if it's someone that can't defend themselves, like a child, someone who's asleep or in a coma, or medically, mentally unable to figure out what's going on or protect themselves, or someone who's physically disabled or incapacitated for any reason. Hey, Clive. Why marry someone who you know don't vibe with you? What do we talk about right now? I thought there were 3 categories. Well, yeah, so this is, he boils this down to 2. The other one, he boiled those down to 3. This, he boils down to 2. So, but this is the part I wanted to read his words. It is good, universally preferable, and enforceable through violence, such as don't murder. I'm like, theft? Violence? Is violence the right word for that? Or should he call it enforceable? Oh, enforceable. Maybe that's the word. Maybe instead of saying through violence, he should just say it's universally preferable and enforceable. Because you could use force. Like, if someone's trying to steal this book from me, like, I have every right to try to steal the book back, right? It's force. It's not violent. I'm not, like, hurting anyone. I'm not, like, hitting him with a hammer because he's trying to steal my book. I'm just like, hey. Or I could, like, maybe even, like, try to remove his hands from my book or something, which isn't necessarily violence, but it is definitely the initiation of force. So I think that would appease me. Dear Stefan, please remove 2 words on page 64 of your book, which says through violence, and anything else in the book that says that violence is, because you're the one who said that it can never be moral. It has to be universally immoral. So violence is always immoral. But you can use force. Is force always immoral? I can't. Skunks and hedgehogs unite. I tried, guys. This is how I feel about this book. I think I understand it, and then I'm like, nah, I don't. Thanks for watching. I'm going to read more, though. He's got a bunch of other books, and the more I read, the more it's like finance. Like when I read that book the other day about economics and financial, like, waves. Same thing then. I was like, it's trying to drink from a fire hydrant. It's not, it doesn't always just click right away the first few times you're exposed to it. So you learn the language, right? I'm learning the language more of the finance industry. I'm learning more of the language of philosophy and debate. And I'm just learning. I love learning. I love being interested in things. Does violence have a given standard? Well, he talks about how it's, like it varies. It isn't. It doesn't, it's not just like, punching is violent, but poking is not. It's kind of like, the initiation of force on someone else could it be considered like level 1 violence? Thank you, Lady Patriot. And the news keeps presenting armed guards as a solution. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with his point about the government and religion being the most dangerous institutions to mankind in history, as opposed to, like, way more dangerous than a murderer or a rapist. Because the government and religions, especially in the past, less so in America today, but definitely in the Middle East, where because you are doing it for God, then you can murder. You can, keep someone as a slave, basically, whether it be your wife or an actual slave or servant, or your children. That's... removing someone's freedom, to me, is it's universally preferable to be free. That's what I don't know if he even really got into that so much in this book. He did talk about freedom in here. Oh crap, I can't search this easily. It's so frustrating. I don't know why. It's like Google Drive just doesn't want me to read through this. Freedom. He had a section called Freedom. I'm going to see if I can jump to that and just remind myself what it said. Freedom. No, it's not in the table of contents. With no government and law, we have anarchy. Exactly, Jordan Davis. So anarchy actually means no ruler. It doesn't mean no rules. So not murdering, raping, or stealing. He's pretty much saying that you could have a perfectly fine society of people with no state, with no... The only difference between the government and the people that work in the government, the individuals that work those roles, is that they have been granted a monopoly on murder and theft. Rape is probably not quite so crystal clear, although the rate of rapes in prisons is much higher than anywhere else in society. So when we put someone in prison, we're basically subjecting them to rape. Not just taking them out of the general population, but we're also subjecting them to become victims of rape, potentially perpetually for a long period of time. And definitely violence. I think the Republic is fine. There just needs to be term limits in local and legislative levels. See, I disagree with that, and I would love to have a discussion with Stefan about that to see, because it does seem like a slippery slope, right? When you say, oh, well, it's a, we're only going to vote for good people, because here's the thing. This is what people's argument is against anarchy. Well, there's bad people in the world, and what are we going to do? Those bad people are going to ruin us. Well, that's exactly why we can't have a government. Because those bad people will just become the government. They'll just figure out how to get into the government. Whatever, a con artist is a con artist. However they can con you, that's how they're going to con you. If you give them this government, and it's like giving them like this silver platter, like, please abuse this system and become the owner, it's not the word I'm looking for, but the owner of this monopoly of force and theft being taxation, because nobody signs up to be taxed. Nobody's like, yes, please tax me. That's what we're sold, and that's why the public education system is so important to the success of the government, because, if you haven't noticed, your children, by law, have to go to public school. Why might that be? Why is it that many religions have Bible school and all of these, child-based programs? And you don't see that so much with reason. You don't see my 5-year-old is going to reason camp, learning about reason, because you don't need to do that, because you don't need to indoctrinate someone and brainwash them to use their senses and science to empirically explore the world around them and be reasonable. But to teach someone that there's a man that no one can see or has ever seen. Well, there were some people that saw him and spoke with him in the Old Testament, but they don't do that anymore. And back then he thought slavery was totally fine and really thought that you should murder gay people. But now we're kind of we're a little different now. But it's just you have to really force that down a child's throat. They can't comprehend it. It doesn't make sense to them. You have to just keep telling them that it's right until they don't know anything else. And when their minds are developing, that's when they're most vulnerable. So if you're a cult or a religion or a government, that's the only way you're going to have success, is by indoctrinating your population as young as possible so that they grow up to be good slaves to your system. I think that's a good way to end it. Let's see who just popped in here. Ryan. Hey, Ryan. We're just leaving here. You guys are awesome. Love you so much. And I hope to see you back tomorrow, where we'll be live again on all 4 platforms. I can't talk about this on Periscope. Let's say it like this. There's a big event. It's a big day tomorrow. So if you want to go over to femyoga.com, click support and support this channel. Maybe at the monthly level. Maybe that has something to do with it. I'm not allowed to talk about it, so I can't really say much more, but watch my replay right before this, where I just define everything in clear language. Chopper says, it seems like more of being defensive, not violence. Right. Yes, I agree with that. I come in the part where you say things about shoving things down kids' throats. Yes, exactly. Christmas Eve party? Maybe. I'm going to be back home in upstate New York, so we'll have to see. You could say I was confused. Hey, JJ, you guys are all coming in as I'm signing off. You're awesome. I hope that you'll read whatever you want to read. Maybe you guys don't like this kind of stuff. Maybe you do. But I really just want to inspire people to learn. Get out there. Learn the truth. Don't just accept what the masses say, what the herd does. If everyone in your circle is unhappy with their lives, let me tell you, I'm so happy with my life. And even as I've gone through hardships, I've been so happy with my life now for like probably about 10 years. Okay, not quite 10 years, but going on 10 years. So trust me that I know a little something about having a pretty good life. And the number one thing that I credit to having my good life is reading books. I used to be a Christian. I don't credit that to my success in life. I think I'm a pretty smart person. I don't credit that. It's really the books, the information, the knowledge, just reading, forcing myself, having that discipline to get new information into my head, and trying so hard to force myself to be open-minded and not just assume that everything I thought before is still correct in this moment. And I'm really challenging you guys to do that same thing. And I think reading books is a good way to kind of force your mind open, especially reading books by people who have the opposite ideas than what you have. So I'll leave you with that. I'm obviously very talkative tonight. Please check out the website, femyoga.com. Click the support button if you like what you see. Help us to keep this going and growing. And if for some reason you get prompted to give an email in your PayPal to send money to the channel, just use femyogasales@gmail.com. femyogasales@gmail.com. And that's SALES. Good to see you too, JJ. Do you ever notice any of the books you read have spelling errors? Yes, actually quite common in books. Yeah, it is. Yep, lots of typos. I didn't notice that in his though, but it's an ebook, so he probably can update it if he notices anything. Remember, free books from this author over at freedomainradio.com. I loved this book. I preferred this book to the book that we reviewed tonight. But yeah, check them all out. They're free, and knowledge is power. The more you learn, the more you earn. This has been A Moment in Time with Taylor. Thank you guys so much for watching, making this show possible. I really couldn't do it without you. And if you can't tell by my energy level, there's nothing I'd rather be doing. I love doing this so much. I love trying to spread the truth and spread ideas and connect people all around the world to each other and to myself. So thanks for making that all possible. I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye.